You mentioned Shenmue having like a big experience, a big impact on you. Is that why you decided to do feudal Japan? Was that part of the motivation for the theme and the aesthetic?
So going back to, so when I was 14, which would have been 2006, I'll go with 2006. Sometime back then, maybe it was 2003. Not that important, but that year was the first year my mom got sick, and I would take her. I would go, to her treatments and stuff, and then we go to Blockbuster. I'm dating myself a little bit, and she'd let me pick out a Xbox game to rent, and I rented Shenmue on a whim and blew my mind. And that same year, The Last Samurai came out. I guess that was 2003 actually. And that movie is still my favorite movie of all time. It blew my mind. Those two kind of got me into martial arts again. I'd done it when I was little, but got me back into, Taekwondo and more recently Wing Chun. And I've always loved martial arts and Eastern philosophy and the kind of Bushido era samurai. And that always resonated with me for some reason, and tried to study it and learn about it in college. And that just it was just a natural theme. It just made sense to me. It's like, all right, well, Bushido and their love of craft and nature and beauty. I drew a connection between that era of samurai and my mother. She was like a gardener and loved nature and was always outside. We had gardens all over our house, and that just kind of stuck with me. And that kind of serenity, they'd write poems for days meditating on a sakura tree and just reflecting on blossoms and those types of things. And on the flip side, the antagonists are kind of pre-Bushido era samurai, which there's a documentary on Netflix about samurai that is pretty recent. And they're like, as it turns out, every Sengoku era clan was like our antagonist. They were not great characters. They were very brutal in warfare. And that's that game world just kind of created itself. And then, we had people kind of do comic strips and other things to help us kind of flesh out the whole lore, which the game does have a lore that goes back before the multiplayer thing, and we can kind of explain. We try to use anything we can, loading screens, cinematics at the end of every match that kind of give you a little bit of context, just to try to get that depth and keep the depth despite it being fast-paced multiplayer.
Did the stay-at-home orders and the pandemic affect this project at all specifically, or were you guys already working kind of remotely at home during the development?
It didn't really affect it at all. If anything, we're just home more so that we don't lose commute time driving to and from work. So some devs could, get a few hours in before work or start a little bit earlier in the night. But for the most part, not really. We are already remote. We do our weekly meetings on, Hangouts, and have our weekly event on Discord. And it didn't really change a whole lot. A few of our devs were stuck in remote locations for a while. That they're travelers. They like to be, all over the world all the time, and they were kind of landlocked for a while, and they kind of just hunkered down, all right, I'm going to try to just do however 2 years worth of work in this 3 months because I'm stuck here. That kind of helped the project indirectly because they got to put more time in than normal. I would say that probably impacted more devs than anything else. They just had a little bit more time to put in, because that's the hardest part leading a project is finding people that want to volunteer time for free. We don't have a budget. I'm not paying anyone. I'm not being paid. So it's kind of a mixture of finding really talented people that are almost ready for the industry that just need some mentoring, and experienced devs that know Unreal that have the free time on top of AAA jobs that want to hop on and help, for a month or a couple months. And that's been tough, but it really helped grow leadership. Is when you can't pay people, you gotta be a great listener. You gotta really take in ideas and be very respectful and very collaborative with work. AAA, it's you gotta listen to the boss or your manager or the director or whoever, and they say they want the thing, you do the thing. Giant spider robot at the end or whatever.
That's what you gotta do, right? That's the hill you die on.
It might be a Western game, but if they want giant spider robot, that's what you make. And that freedom, comes with trying to kind of keep people on board. And we've been really lucky to get really great people that want to stick with us. A lot of the devs have been with us for 5+ years of the journey. And the best thing I can do is try to get them jobs. And, I think like 7 or 8 people have come through the project and gotten jobs. And that really keeps it worthwhile for me. It's like, I can't pay you. I would love to. I can't wait till the day that I can write a check and sign it to everyone that's helped get us there, because I certainly couldn't have gotten there by myself.
No matter what that guy said, he got his spider giant robot. It happened. Whether it was a Superman film or the Wild Wild West film, he made it happen. It doesn't matter. The context doesn't matter. The fact is that he got it. Like he made it. His mind. That's all I wanted to do was up the chain. Sorry, I know that story. So that's a hilarious reference. That guy was gonna die on that spider hill. It was so weird.
There's a thing. A professor in college was like, enjoy picking what you want now, because once you're in the industry, you're going to be making giant spider robots or crates.
So weird.
And he wasn't wrong. We're all naive, like, no, we're not. Because for some reason our voices still sound like that in college. No, we're not. Yeah. They're gonna listen. We're so creative. No, it's a giant spider.
What basically, was there anything? Obviously, I've asked you if your day job has translated over to your indie game, but has there been an opposite effect? Have you been learning more things working on your indie game that you've been able to apply other places?
Yes, I think indie has helped my AAA career more than the reverse by a lot. Because there's only 6 of us. There's so many roles that I had to learn that I would have never learned at a job. Like, in the industry, for the most part, the roles are pretty vertical. Like, you pick your character artist or you're a texture artist or whatever, and you just grow that vertical skill set, and you don't really get to generalize too much unless you're at like a startup. And indie is the opposite. Like, I had to learn like UI art, UI development. I was an environment artist, to start with. So I was making crates and statues, and I spent like 2 years making all the towers in Smite. And it was kind of like, I kind of have to understand programming and how do the animations work, what tells the animations to work, like all these things. And that kind of pieced together. I remember at Hi-Rez, when I transitioned out of Smite, they were kind of like starting to experiment with UE4. UE4 was pretty new at the time, and they're like, hey, you do UE4 for your indie game. You're the only one here that's really messed with it. Can you help us like get that off the ground floor? And next thing I know, I'm a tech artist, and I'm looking at performance and engine and how all the teams are making things. So like, hey, how all the stuff's pieced together. You can make sure the workflows are efficient. Are we doing things in like a timely fashion? Are we wasting other like things being lost in translation? And that kind of became my thing. And then when I went to Tripwire on Maneater, I was like the performance guy on all the platforms and made sure it hit 60 FPS across the board. And now I'm at ILMX Lab doing the same thing on the Star Wars Hotel. Like it's a crazy, I didn't think I'd turn into a tech artist, but indie lend itself to that, because it's like, well, you have to know all of Unreal 4, because you have to either teach your team how to do it or do it yourself.
Speaking of that, like how advances in technology, obviously that your game released early access 2017, but was in development before that. Does that help development when things are changing so rapidly, either with Unreal or PC hardware and stuff like that? Does it make things easier? Does it make it harder?
Both in different ways. It makes it easier because so we started all the way as UT3 mod, and then UDK came out. And it was like, it's a ton of work to move your project into a new engine, even though it's still Unreal, because you're like having to recode like most of your game. But like the content, then you get all these like tools that make everything better. It's like, well, you had terrain, now you have the landscape tools from like UDK. And then when Unreal 4 came out, like we moved day one. I took, I think like 3 days off from work and just like did Unreal 4 tutorials and read documentation. Like I have to learn this engine as fast as possible. And I was like, this engine's awesome. Let's move to this. And that's a total, like we had to redo everything. Everything worked different, but the tools are way better. It is like way faster to make like menus and stuff, like way easier to import animations and set up the combat, like state machines and all that, setting up levels. Everything got more efficient once you're there, but the legwork to get there is like like I'd say 2 or 3 of the like 14 years was lost just to engine updates. And even Unreal 4, from Unreal 4.0 to 426 now, that's 26 updates we had to do, where that might break half your code base, because Unreal changed how the engine side works, which changed how your code has to work now. But the tools have only gotten better and made it easier. So it's like even on the environment side, like we were still texturing stuff in Photoshop early up until Substance Painter came out, whatever, 6 or 7 years ago. That completely changed the game, because now you can make your physically based materials super easy. Texturing a gate or a pagoda takes an hour and it looks awesome now, because the software got better. But at the same time, now we have to circle back to all the stuff that we made before Substance Painter existed.
That's crazy. Where can people go to like support your game and find obviously it's an early access on Steam. Do you have any plans for console release? Where do you have a website, a Discord? Where can they go to like find out more information and like contribute to your game and play it?
Our Steam page is probably like the first place just to pop it on a wish list or buy it and hop in a game. But our Discord is kind of where our community base is. We every Wednesday night we've done a group development team versus community for probably the last 5 years, even before early access. That's been our, like, hey, we're going to throw a patch up. We don't know if it's going to work. Like, we're going to make sure it doesn't crash right away, but we're trying out new stuff, balance changes, new menus, like adding language support, whatever it is. And, we're kind of just trying to get feedback right off the bat and just try stuff. That's where, if we're doing a big balance change, or, hey, we made hitboxes 4 times bigger, how does it feel? And it's just nice to sit in there and cut up with the community and get their feedback. And there's some amazingly smart people in there. And that was kind of an extension of going back to earlier when we were talking about is it frustrating to deal with building like a player base? And we used to do dev streams. I just stream on Twitch, just working on whatever in Unreal, and hope to first inform gamers that are coming through, like, see how hard some stuff is. Like, hey, I just watched you like work on this thing for like 5 days. I would have thought that took like an hour. And sometimes it's the other way. I would have thought that takes a week, but you just did it in like a minute. And informing people. And also, like, we made a lot of friends that way. A lot of people in the community that have tested for like 5 years are there because like they watched a dev stream one night, and you get to know people that way. That was pretty cool. But yeah, Discord, Steam.
And then I'm like, are you reaching out to any kind of publishing house to help you get on consoles, PS4, Xbox, Nintendo Switch?
So we have contracts with Microsoft and Sony to do console, like, self-publish if we want. There's definitely like some back-end like engineering stuff that we'd have to do to make that happen, but we certainly can. And that's always been, so once the game comes out, we have like a sliding scale. It's like, if it does this good, then we'll do this X many patches, or like we'll do 2 more character classes, or we'll do 8 more character classes. Like, we know what they are, we know what we want to do and in what order. Console's the exact same. Like, there's a point at which we're like, all right, basically we can afford to get the software engineering help we need to get it on console. But we've put a lot into our controller support for PC, so it's getting it on PlayStation, Xbox is kind of like just doing like the back end like server stuff, since it's different. Like, we're using Steam for everything on PC. We just have to like go do the Sony and Xbox version of like achievements and server and leaderboards and all that kind of stuff. So I certainly hope so. I like doing console development and all the performance tuning and all that. So hoping so within probably the first year or 2 after release, if it's going to happen. It's from like early sunset to we're going on console quick because we're doing great. Let's get cross play up and all that,